Welcome to the Choosing Cheer podcast, the show about the joy of Jesus in all of life's moments. I'm your host, Nicolet Bell, and my hope is that you'll see his joy is not dependent on circumstances, but rooted in his presence. Let's go there together. Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited about today's episode. I've got a new friend here with me this morning. This is Katie Ginn, and she is the editor of Mississippi Christian Magazine. And Katie, we are so excited to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so honored to be here.
Yeah, well, for those who don't know you, and as I'm getting to know you, tell us just a little bit about yourself as we get started this morning.
Yeah, so I grew up in Arkansas, and we moved a couple of times for my dad's job and landed in the Gluckstadt area just north of Jackson. And so I wound up transferring to the University of Mississippi my sophomore year because by that time I knew I wanted to do magazines, and it wound up being a great decision because if y'all are not familiar, Ole Miss has a wonderful magazine program run by Dr. Samir, Mr. Magazine Husney. He literally has that trademarked.
Wow.
So that was awesome. And after college, I worked for the Northside Sun newspaper in Jackson for 4 years, and then the Clarion Ledger newspaper in Jackson for 3 years before basically God dropped MCL into my lap. It's crazy. Mississippi Christian Living is my dream job. So that's been quite the ride. And I got married a year ago to Stephen Ginn. So that's me.
And how long have you been with the magazine?
With the magazine, it's been nearly 6 years. So in September of 2018 is when I took over.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. That is really, really amazing. So, Katie, on this season of the Choosing Cheer podcast, we are talking about choosing cheer in our everyday, ordinary lives. And we've kind of rooted that in the scripture, Romans 12, verses 1-2 in the Message translation, which says, so here's what I want you to do, God helping you take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing that you can do for him. And we've talked about this in a variety of ways this season, and we're kind of wrapping up this conversation in our podcast. But I kept thinking about, for this conversation today, what you do is very much encouraging people to do this on an everyday basis. You're intersecting faith into people's everyday life through your work at the magazine. So in your role there, you help spread the news about people who are sharing the joy of Jesus in their everyday lives. And in a world where media really can be very negative and divisive, you are getting to cheer people on in the work you're doing with the magazine. So tell us just a little bit more about the magazine and your role there.
And I love the way you put that I get to cheer people on. I hadn't really thought of it that way before, but it's so true because when I get to interview people, like I just interviewed a couple a week or two ago, and there was a part of their story that I didn't know about. Like I already thought they had a good story, but then they went deeper and shared, just a very tough time in their lives when the husband lost his job and medical sales got put on disability because he had 10 back surgeries.
Wow.
Chronic pain for years and years. And they're both getting emotional talking about it, but they get to share how God worked in that and how he's used that since then. So it is fun because as people share their stories with me, they get cheered on just by sharing their own story, which is so cool. But as far as what I do, I'm the publisher and editor. I plan the content for the magazine itself, and then who's going to speak at our women's retreat, who's going to speak at our other events and things like that. And then the other big thing is just, running the business, keeping the ship afloat, which has been a learning curve for me.
Yes.
I didn't take a business course at Ole Miss, even though I thought I might want to actually start a magazine one day. I still didn't take a business course. I don't know what was wrong with me, but I've had to learn a lot. So that hasn't always been my favorite aspect of the job, but basically running the business and planning the content are my two main jobs. And I'm trying to keep that my two main jobs and not take on too many hats. But
it's hard in a creative industry where you're just trying to keep the ship afloat and meet needs of people. So that's amazing. And you really are in a position that a lot of people, it takes a lot longer to get in the level of position that you are in. You're very young to be in the position you're in. So, do you ever get like pushback about that? Or are people really just like, I'm a chief operating officer for our nonprofit, and I'm the youngest one on our team.
Yes.
And it can be challenging sometimes to be young and be in leadership.
Yeah, I don't think I've really gotten pushback per se. I mean, I've been called kiddo before, but whatever. If you're going to buy an ad, you can call me kiddo. I don't. But no, I don't think I've gotten pushback. I think it's just they already knew the magazine because it was so established. It was around for 16 years before I ever took over, and it took some people a year or two to figure out, oh, Marilyn's not there anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's been good. I don't think I've gotten pushback as far as my age. I think there were some people who maybe they were associated with the magazine, and now that Marilyn's gone, they no longer felt obligated, I guess, or they didn't have a relationship with me, so they maybe stepped away. But I don't know that was my age or anything. I think it's just, that's the way things work, is through relationship, So it's a journey.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So stories are such an important part of what you get to do in your role at the magazine. I can tell that you're a lover of stories. Yes. You wouldn't have gone into the profession that you're in if you didn't love stories. So tell us, what role have stories played in your own life?
I love that question. My mom read to me faithfully from the time I was a baby. Like, she created a monster, basically. Like, she couldn't get through a day without reading to me. And so I probably had more books than toys, and I loved it. And so I've always loved to read. I always have a book going, even if I haven't been able to read it in a week or so. I always have a book going. And so, they're just, sometimes stories are just an escape from our real life problems. And that's great and fun. And we need that sometimes. And then sometimes, if you take it to the next level, like say you're reading about Frodo, realizing he has to be the one to take the ring to Mount Doom. And you're like, ugh, I've been there. Not with the Ring of Power necessarily, but just, feeling this weight of what you're called to do, but you're dreading it. You don't want to do it. And so you can see yourself in stories and then take it to the next level with the true stories of Scripture. That's had such an impact on me. And probably the biggest one that I relate to is Thomas. And he's a little bolder in vocalizing his doubts than I would have been. He's like, look, if I don't see the hole in his hands and put my finger in it, if I don't put my hand in the hole in his side, I will not believe. And you're kind of like, ugh! Like, what if he doesn't show up? Like, what if you don't get that chance, But of course, the Lord does show up for him and says, here, put your finger here. Here's my side. Put your hand in and believe. And Thomas says, my Lord and my God. And I can't read that without tearing up because that is so me. And it reminds me of how gracious Jesus is for my doubt and meeting me where I am. And, he may not always give us exactly the proof that we're asking for, but he gives us what we need to have faith. So stories are huge. I mean, I could talk a long time about that.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up that story. I think a lot of times what hinders people from coming to faith or increasing in faith is not really believing that Jesus can handle their questions.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so we focus on we call him Doubting Thomas, and we focus on that part of his story. But so much of his story is that God met him where he was.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't shame him for asking the questions. He welcomed the questions and gave him what he needed to believe.
Yeah.
And so that's such a powerful story and testimony. So in a world that is always busy and on the go, how does making time to hear other people's stories help us experience Jesus's joy? You get to do that when you interview people for the magazine.
Yeah, I was thinking about all of that on the way here because, if I hadn't spent the last decade plus of my career interviewing people on a regular basis and hearing other people's stories, man, I'm self-centered enough as it is. I just can only imagine the amount of navel-gazing, just disgusting self-centeredness that would be Katie Ginn if I didn't interview other people and take time to hear their stories. And I think it helps us take a step back from the rat race. As you mentioned, we're always on the go. But when you sit and listen to someone, you're like, oh, okay, right. God is working. God is here. I can relate to this. I'm going to be okay. It just helps us see the big picture instead of getting caught up in the traffic or the podcast recording or the endless to-do lists. I think it's a great balm for the soul. So.
Yeah, what's one of your favorite stories?
Oh, man, that I've gotten
to
do?
Hard question. Yes. Is there one that sticks out to you?
Well, one that sticks out, I mean, it'd be hard to pick a favorite.
Yeah.
But one that sticks out is I got to interview Christy Henderson, wife of Chip Henderson of Pine Lake Church. So they're a very well-known couple in this area. And she shared her mental health journey with me for the magazine and was very vulnerable and opened up about a lot of stuff. And it was so impactful. It was impactful for me at the time because I've mentioned on my own podcast that I've struggled with questions and doubts over the years. And for whatever reason, at that time, that happened to be a time of struggle for me as well. So I'm interviewing her. And by the end of the afternoon, I wind up like teary-eyed on her couch telling her about some stuff I'm going through, which of course didn't make it into print. But, you know, she was able to encourage me. And more importantly, later, a man approached me at an event here in the community and said, listen, my niece, I sent her a copy of that magazine and she's getting treatment now because of that.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
You know, so that one sticks out for that reason, but there's so many. I mean, it's just really cool. I feel like I've gotten to make a lot of friends through hearing their stories.
Yeah. So I think that's an encouragement to those listening because, you know, we don't have to be interviewing for a magazine to take time to hear other people's stories. You just get the privilege of getting to do that and kind of be forced to do that.
I'm forced to do it,
see that.
Yes.
But we all have this opportunity to stop and hear stories. And when we think about Jesus's life, he taught in stories, parables. He took time to listen to stories as he was going around and meeting and ministering to people. He would meet the physical need, but he would take time to hear the story and the spiritual needs surrounding that story and that person. And so I think, you know, we just get so busy sometimes. And so can we just slow down and go, okay, instead of rushing off when somebody starts to open up or share something or see that as a burden or an inconvenience, would we just kind of open our eyes and see people and use our ears and listen to people the way that Jesus did?
Yeah, well, and listen before we give them the prescription or the recipe that we think is going to fix their life.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm so guilty of that. Man, I that's my default is like, well, I think you should do this, this, and this differently, you know? But, you know, meanwhile, I haven't heard the whole depth of their story. And that may not change like what I think they should do, but it changes the level of compassion that I have for them. And maybe, you know, maybe I don't share every single thing I think they're doing wrong right off the bat, you know?
Right.
So.
Right. And maybe we just listen to listen.
Yeah.
And maybe that's exactly what somebody needs. And a lot of times I feel like for myself, I'm a verbal processor. So when I say something out loud, I'll even come up with what I might need to do or what the Lord wants me to do.
Yes.
Because if you just keep it in your head, sometimes it's, you know, it can seem one way. And when you say it out loud to somebody else, it's like, oh, okay, this is, and so not interjecting advice where we're not being asked for it, but really taking the time to listen to people. That's a big gift that we can give, to others.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Katie, you have a new podcast.
Yes.
And it's really exciting. I'm really excited about you getting to do that. So tell us kind of a little bit about it, how it got started, how God put that on your heart, and what that's looking like for you in this season.
Well, I'm still figuring it out, to be honest.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
It's called Oh My Word with Katie because I say oh my word all the time. And it, you know, a little bit of a pun because we talk about the word of God some, but it's two main things, I think, for my podcast. I want to share people's stories like we've been talking about, but I want to talk to people about their calling. That's one of the main things that I want to ask every guest is like, what do you feel like your calling is? And then not just the Sunday school answer of love God, love people, tell people about Jesus, but like, okay, but how? Like, what does that look like for you? Like, how are you, Nicolet, supposed to do that? And then not just that, but what actually helps you do that when the alarm clock goes off? Like practically, like how do you do that when you don't feel like doing it, you know? And so I want to share stories. I want to talk about calling with people from a variety of backgrounds. And every episode opens with an oh my word story. So that's just any story that might make you think, oh my word. And it could be funny or silly or dramatic or powerful or just whatever. And they have run the gamut so far. I've recorded several episodes and I can tell you it's everything from like a silly like blunder of errors when you're introduced to somebody to like the guy who got convicted at a rap concert and just fell to his knees, and his buddies are like, what's going on? So it's anything and everything. But I love sharing people's stories. And I just selfishly, for me, I like hearing about people's calling and what that looks like and how they work that out, because I'm an overthinker and it's easy for me to get in my head about, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this,
Yeah.
So I think that can be helpful just for me or for anyone, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you that question. Yeah.
Oh,
so
goodness.
yeah, we're going to just ask you that question. That's so neat that that's something you're passionate about. So you said you're overthinking it, so I know you've thought about it. So tell me, how do you feel like you live out your calling practically?
Yeah. Well, I think a big part of my calling is just sharing God's grace with people, especially people who may be struggling with doubts or questions. And how I do that, obviously the magazine, sharing stories in the magazine. And I have my little editor's page. I write an editor's letter every month. And so I try to open up and share, things I've struggled with or things I've learned and how God has taught me. And I used to want to write a memoir and share my whole testimony in this beautiful memoir. But honestly, sometimes 750 words at a time is better. And it gets out there. There's no barriers. There's no publisher to go through. I'm the publisher. I can write whatever I want. So, I get to get it out there on a monthly basis. So I think that's a huge part of it. And I think just being there for people, listening to people, I felt, this would be a whole other podcast, I felt more of a call lately to pour into young women, like teen girls and college girls, because that's around the time that my faith started to become more scary and real and, am I really going to do this? So I'm still figuring out what that looks like too, but it may look like TikTok, which is frightening in and of itself, but we'll see.
So I served as a youth pastor in Madison and Jackson for about 5 years.
Okay.
And so that is absolutely my heart is hearing that just gives me the warm and fuzzies.
Aww.
Because so many people are not telling our teenagers that it's okay to come to God with those questions, that he really can handle them, we talked about with Thomas, and that you don't have to have it all together at 15. Nobody expects you to.
Wow,
so, just you can live and learn and grow in grace. And that's so beautiful that you're kind of feeling that specific calling.
Yeah.
How neat.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a privilege, and it is I don't thank God enough for it, but it's amazing. I love it.
That's wonderful. So I do want you to tell us, we're going to circle back to the podcast because I distracted us.
Oh, no, you're fine.
That last question. So tell us, how often is the podcast going to come out? When's it coming out? How can people find it?
Yeah, so we just launched season 1, episode 1 last week.
I listened. It was great.
Thank you so much.
It was really great.
Thank you. I share more of my story in that particular episode, but it's going to come out twice a month, and you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. I'm probably going to do 12 episodes per season and just keep it rolling. Season 2 will probably start either this fall or early next year. And so, look for it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And we're on social media at Oh My Word Pod on Facebook and Instagram. So,
Awesome. Well, in like we said, our media and everyone is so often so negative, and in our kind of influencer culture on social media, it can seem like we're up against each other. And so I just really want to be a place that we're just really cheering each other on.
For sure.
I'm absolutely cheering you on.
Well, thank you so much.
This new venture for you. And if we're not, as Christians and followers of Jesus, supporting each other in spreading the joy of Jesus and the gospel, then, what are we doing? I want everybody to go and listen to Katie's podcast and to share it with somebody, and also leave a review, because can I just say, as a fellow podcaster, that we don't really talk about that because it can be uncomfortable. You don't want to be self-promoting. You don't want to be where you are, asking people to, it just can feel funny sometimes.
It does feel funny.
But it's so important for getting the message out. And I feel like that we don't really talk enough about that, because the algorithms are set in such a way, if we don't really have people interacting and engaging, then your content just gets pushed way to the bottom. And so in a world that is negative and it kind of overwhelming, we want to be voices of truth. So give reviews, share, and click and listen. And
like,
so that
follow, share,
really makes a huge difference, especially for a podcast just getting started.
Yeah. So. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I want to have you on the podcast too. So I'm going to turn the tables and ask you some questions.
Yeah, would love to do that. So Katie, I'll just ask you one more question. Where do you feel like you're choosing cheer in your life right now?
Oh my goodness. I mean, honestly, to be really honest right now, I don't feel like I have to choose as much deliberately because life is good right now. Like, life is fun.
Oh, how beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been married for a year. The business is going well. It's picked up a little bit since COVID. Praise the Lord. So, right now it's good. But I think back to the times when it wasn't so good or when I was agonizing over decisions or whatever. And I mean, I think it's day by day. I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'm going to give today to you. And most importantly, I'm going to give tomorrow to you, Jesus, because I can't even deal with that right now. And so it's counting your blessings. It's the little things. It's all the cliches, but they're true. Thank you for this delicious meal that I just got to eat and the ability to acquire it. Thank you for being able to come record a podcast. And just, I think we have to deliberately remind ourselves. And even if that means keeping a gratitude journal, I mean, all these things sound so hokey, but they work, So I think that's basic, but that's what's worked for me.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point because so often on the podcast, we talk about, choosing cheer when things are tough or hard or when things aren't going our way, not the way that we expect them. But, what about in those good times?
Yeah.
Can we just stop and thank Jesus in those good times? Because it's easy to pray and pray and pray for something. Even this morning, I was writing in my journal and thanking Jesus for something that he answered a prayer. And so often I'll just pray and pray and pray and forget to say thank you. Or say thank you once and then not say it again, right? And so continuing to have that heart of gratitude, that's a lesson all of us can learn.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a joy to have you and get to meet you.
Thank
and
you.
Friends, I want you to go follow Katie and listen to our podcast. And I hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you back next week. Friends, it's my honor and privilege to get to spend time with you week after week. It is such a joy that you would choose to be a part of our conversation here on the podcast. You are such an important part of what we do. If you like what you hear, I would invite you to share it, pass it along, text this episode to a friend, like, rate, and subscribe to our show. What you do makes a difference. And remember, friend, we're cheering you on.